What I would like to do is to speak to the actual techniques and analyze a work of art, but I'd like to speak to the techniques of beauty, of the form of beauty. I am a church composer, a maker of things of sorts, and so I will be speaking from the perspective of a composer. And let me pull up my little slideshow here. Okay. Now, the first thing I would like to start off with is the idea of repetition. My father used to say to me whenever I got in trouble that repetition is the mother of learning. And he would say it to me in Russian. I have no idea why, but it's a saying in Russian, I take it. And when we present a melody, when an artist has a musical idea, it means nothing if it is not repeated. And if you take take a look at any of the hymns that we sing, any piece in the hymnal, a melody is repeated several times. This is so that the congregation or the audience, if you're looking at from the perspective of classical music and an audience, right? So the audience can understand what the melody is before the composer begins developing the melody. So some techniques that we can use, and I'm going to use very, very simple techniques here, because when we have something beautiful, which in this case, the content is beautiful. We have our liturgical texts. When we have something like that, we don't need to do something overly complicated. So the first idea is to simply reverse the melody, right? Play around with the order of the notes. The second idea is to change the key. That's a famous type of a Broadway technique right there. At the end of every piece, they're going to change the key to really try to instill in you the heightened emotion. You can take something from minor into major or vice versa, and you can change the tempo of a piece of music. Now, being a maker of something, I mean, we're all the makers of our lives. If any of you have read that wonderful book, Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives, that it becomes quite clear. These are techniques, I don't know, maybe I'm a little weird, but these are techniques that I try to apply to my life. What would it mean to try something at a different tempo in real life, right? In parenting, in my, talking to my wife, my relationships with my friends and church people. What would it mean to change the key? How would I use that technique? So, but I guess that's neither here nor there, but it is something that I try to do, and we all are makers in a way. Now, I would like to talk about form, the form of a piece of music. And in this case, the form of a hymn typically follows this, A, B, A. Now, being a jazz musician, I would say 90% of the jazz repertoire follows this form, where A is a melody or an idea that is introduced, then we repeat it, and then, because we do enjoy a certain level of variation, we have a new idea, which is B, right? A melody that is different from A. And then we go back to A to give us a sense of reassurance, right? This is a very neat little package, just the right amount of familiarity and just the right amount of variation. This has been used in countless genres of music, all the way from classical music, in some cases even ancient music, but not as often, because in ancient music was primarily ritualistic, meaning it was tied to a ritual, not for self-expression. And so, I mean, and this is even the formula for, well, I would venture to say 99% of pieces that you would hear on the radio, right? Chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus. Now, there is another form, which is something we call through composed, which essentially is A to Z, right? We do not repeat anything. We go from A to B to C, etc., to the next idea all the way to Z. You're taking a journey, in other words. And familiarity and variation is a hard thing to manage with this. You have to have a theme here. Now, I'm going to jump back to AABA real quick. And if you take a look at some of the prayers in the Bible, some of the Psalms, and the one that comes to mind right now is Hannah's prayer in 1 Kings, where she's praying, and well, I don't know if you've ever noticed how well composed a lot of the prayers that we have are. We actually compose our prayers. And she starts by saying, the Lord has exalted the horn of his people. And then it goes on this beautiful, long passage about how the roles have been reversed, right? She was barren and now she is pregnant, right? And how God will take the lowly and exalt them. And everything is reversed. In other words, the world is flipped upside down. And then she ends with, the Lord has exalted the horn of his people, right? So that's a form of A, B, A, right? It's very comforting, speaking from the perspective of form, analyzing something to end with that same phrase. Now, an example of something through composed would be none other than the Lord's Prayer. When this was pointed out to me, my mind was blown, and I can't unsee it now. But if you take a look at the very first words, Our Father, we are speaking about God the Father, right? We are addressing him who is the highest of all possible things, right? And then we go down to thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So we are beginning a descent here. We now are bringing in earth. We go down to give us this day our daily bread. Now we are fixated on the daily things, on our daily needs. And forgive us our trespasses. Now we're speaking about our sins, right? As we forgive those, etc. Lead us not into temptation, delving even lower, right? Now into temptation, but deliver us from evil, which is the lowest of the low. So we are starting with God the Father and ending with evil, right? And there is a form to this, right? Through composed, but there is a theme, at least, right? When Christ composed this is a work of art. And so I encourage you to take a look at the prayers of the church, the Psalms, and see how they are written. Actually analyze them. It's okay to do that. A lot of times I fall into the trap of just letting it be something that is almost unattainable when I hear the Psalms, right? I'm not holy enough to really understand it. I'm a sinner. I'm not, but to actually pay attention to the form of it, I believe will reveal different aspects of the beauty. Now, I'm going to put forward a piece that is composed by Sir John Tavener, the wonderful Orthodox composer, and he has taken the text to this is the communion hymn for Easter, and the words are, as one who has slept, the Lord has risen, and rising he has saved us. And then we have 3 alleluias. Now, if we take a look at the text, we have this kind of beautiful ascent, right? As one who has slept, and then the next theme is rising, the Lord has risen, and in rising, now we have salvation. He has saved us. So there's a nice little arc, and this is a very simple text. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through the score, and then we're going to listen to it. Normally, I would suggest we listen to the piece first, and then look at the score, then listen again. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of talk through the score real quick. If it doesn't make sense, just please be patient with me. It will as soon as I play the music for you. What we have here is the choir is divided into 2 parts. And so first off, we have our choir, our singers. Second part, in this recording that I'm going to play for you, we have a string quartet that is holding an E minor chord. Okay, so a minor chord that is resembling an esone in music. In Orthodox music, specifically Greek Orthodox music, the esone is a held note, and that represents the kingdom of heaven, of eternity going on. Traditionally, in ancient Orthodox music practices, you weren't supposed to take a breath, right, when you're doing an esone. It was held continually while the melody was going on before it. Now, if we take a look at the soprano, the very top line, we have our melody, right, as one who has slept, and it ends right there at the top again. Then what Sir John Tavener does, he takes the exact same melody and actually the exact same harmonization. So all the voices do the same thing, and then he reverses them, right? So, and you'll take a look at that. It'll become more clear as we listen to it. He reverses it. So now we have this ascending, the Lord has risen, which makes perfect sense, right? As one who has slept, and then reversing that theme, we're going from death to life now. The Lord has risen. And then what he does is he goes from E minor to almost a very stark contrast to E major. And what he does is he has the exact same music. So if you have a melody, if you have an idea, something that is simple and straightforward, and it's revealing the text, you don't have to do much. You can get a lot of music out of a little bit. So all he does is change the key to E major here and has the exact same music. And then he goes back to E minor and does the exact same music for Alleluia, repeated 3 times. Again, there's no real variation here. Okay, he's just using the simple techniques of repetition, of changing the key. And then what he does is he goes up a step to F sharp minor and does the whole thing exactly again. Exactly what I've described. The whole thing is repeated again, just up a step to give a sense of rising. As you can see at the top, he says with a sense of rising, right? So let me go back here and cue up the music, and we'll give it a quick listen. All right, and I believe that concludes my talk. I'd like to finish with one final point. I really appreciated what Robin and Father Patrick were saying about the hard work and the content that we have to put into our lives and that we have to put into our music and our church services. It's a very I believe you used the right word, Father, when you said it's evil. It's a form of perversion to take the techniques of art and then put content in there that is not glorifying God. And that's something that I've experienced in quite a few works of art throughout my life, and it always left me feeling quite disturbed. So thank you both for your ideas and your talks.